Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to give it a couple minutes and let folks hop on, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, Jeremy. Good morning. Hope you're doing well. Rodney, good to see you. I heard that you made it to the event in Vegas, so nice to have you on here. Hi, Ian. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. We have a number of folks on the call today. My name is Jenny Norris, and I'm the Membership and Program Senior Coordinator over here at Elevate. Today's discussion is Dell Technologies presents Answering Common Questions on VMware by Broadcom. If you're new here, welcome. To give you a little bit more of information of who Elevate is, we are an independent customer-led user group for Dell Technologies customers on the multi-cloud journey to modernize their IT infrastructure. We bring customers, partners, and Dell employees together to share best practices and network with industry experts. We do this in a variety of different ways, in-person events and virtual events, similar to the one today. We were just at VMware Explore, where we had a nice event with our customers and Dell experts to kind of continue the conversation about VMware by Broadcom, which we'll discuss more today. A couple of things for you to note. We do have the Q&A function and the chat box to continue the discussion. If you do have a question, I know that we have a lot of folks on the call today. We might not be able to get to it, but we do have Dell experts that will be able to answer them in the chat. So please feel free to use that, and we'll make sure to get those answered. With that being said, I'm going to pass it over to the Vice President of Elevate Technology User Group, Adam Little.
Hey, thanks, Jenny. I want to thank everyone for joining. Seems like we have some great attendance and some great speakers. As Jenny highlighted, right, there's going to be lots of questions. We're going to do the best we can to answer as best we can on some of these things, but bear with us that we may not have all the answers. We may need to follow up. And there's also some experts in the chat that'll be chiming in and answering those. So I want to start out by introducing our speakers today. We've got Ash McCarty, Director of Multi-Cloud Product Management at Dell. And then we've got Sam Niemi, Senior Product Manager at Dell Technologies. Thank you guys both for joining us today. I guess let's start off with talking about what did you guys think of VMware Explore this year? What were key takeaways? What was the vibe like? We'll start with you, Ash.
Yeah, thanks. And appreciate the time and happy to be here. Sam is joining. I just want to give a little more context as Sam is not new to VxRail or VMware. But he's now a team lead on VMware on my team. So we have a lot of activities in flight with Broadcom, more than we've had in the past, actually. So there's always a lot of stuff on our plate. So I'm happy to have Sam here to help give his experience. He did also attend with me at VMware Explore. To kind of answer your question, I've attended lots of these VMware events, whether it was Explore for the past few years or it was what was it, VMworld before that.
Yeah.
Vibe was definitely different this year. I would definitely describe it as in a more intimate setting. I guess I would say I believe last year's VME was around 14,000 people in attendance. This year, I think it was a little around half of that. So you could definitely feel a change. However, to be honest with you, going into it, I think we debated back and forth what it'd be like, and it was totally not unexpected because I know how many people are still frustrated, unsure about the changes. So it's not surprising that a lot of customers and partners weren't ready to commit the additional resources to travel for the week. That being said, it was still very steady traffic to the Dell booth on the expo floor. All the booths were seeing a lot of steady traffic. We had a lot of really good, effective customer and partner meetings during the week. We had a tremendous turnout for the Elevate user group. So we had the Elevate user group at Flight Club on Monday night. And I'm terrible at estimating. I was going to see if you thought, like, I felt like it was like 50 plus folks. I don't know what the actual number was, but it was jammed in there and hopping. So it was a great opportunity to network with all the folks on the Elevate user group, and Intel was there. So I felt like it was a good show, just definitely more intimate than it was in the past, but still achieved kind of the outcome we were kind of looking for. What about you?
Yeah, for sure. I'd agree there. I think there was a lot of good conversations at the Elevate event. But yeah, to your point, it's Flight Club's only so big, right? It felt a little cramped at times, which was a good thing. But yeah, I thought overall the keynote was super interesting, and you know, it was what I expected. But like you said, a little bit more intimate, a little less folks there, which, you know, did make it feel like previous years. But as you have, I've been there for pretty much, I think, almost every VMworld or VMware Explore since about 2013. So it definitely had a different vibe to it. But yeah, Sam, did you have thoughts there on what your takeaways were?
Yeah, I mean, from a conference perspective, a lot of good energy. Honestly, it was a pretty positive event, and seeing, you know, having lots of customers come up to us and say, you know, VxRail has been a great experience for us, and knowing that we can continue to deliver VxRail, that we will continue to see the latest innovations that Broadcom talked about, VMware talked about at the show, and being able to see those coming for VxRail is going to be really fun.
Yeah, for sure. I think, you know, some of the conversations I was having with some key customers were definitely that, I don't know, from an outsider perspective, it feels like maybe Broadcom's coming around to talking to a little more customers and working a little better with them. So I think that we all had hoped maybe that would happen over time. So I just, you know, I would encourage everyone to talk with your account managers, figure that out. You know, do the best you can there. Obviously, we'll help with whatever resources we have and however we can help you. But you know, from our side, just knowing that those products are going to be supported, and that that's part of the big plan going forward. Did you guys want to focus on anything on like the keynote big takeaways? There's a lot of discussion on AI and a lot of discussion on product offerings, and VCF was a big one. You know,
Yeah, I was able to catch the keynote. You know, I think VMware spent a lot of time talking about the breadth of their portfolio, but their key focus was really around highlighting VMware Cloud Foundation 9. You know, they're really positioning this as the marquee private cloud offer for customers. But they did also talk a lot about the other technologies surrounding it. You know, you talked about, you know, private AI. They talked about security, Tanzu. So it wasn't just a VCF affair. I think much of what they talked about and kind of the sentiment I heard from customers is they were kind of happy to see Broadcom start to deliver, at least from some of the sessions they were even hearing, on their promise of kind of reinvesting in their existing portfolio. I think in past years, it's been, here's this new product, here's this new capability, here's this product, where this year was slightly different, where it's more, here's our existing portfolio, and here's what we're doing in the areas to invest in certain focal points where they haven't in the past. And so I think that's good that they're kind of delivering on, hey, there's these things we know that you've been asking for a long time and we haven't addressed, and now they look like they're really starting to focus there. You know, when it comes to VxRail, you know, some of the big announcements were VCF 9, VCN 9, vSphere 9. The good thing is we've already been working with Broadcom, so obviously not a big surprise to us. We've been working with them for several months and targeting our VxRail releases, which we will align to the time to market with Broadcom next year. So we'll continue to work with them. You know, and when you look at where we're going with VxRail, it's obviously collaborating with Broadcom on VCF, because that's a big push for them and their new, you know, their push and their strategy. But also we know many of our customers, you know, have kind of differentiated use cases, different workloads. So we'll fully support and continue to support customers using those deployments with VVS as well, because VVF as well, because we know there's different use cases for different customers. I don't know, Sam, what was your takeaway? You're on mute, bud.
Sorry. rookie here apparently.
What happened to it?
Yeah, I was busy typing up a response to one of the chat questions. So, from my perspective, when we look at what VCF, kind of the future of what VCF is able to provide, as well as VBF, I think that regardless, we're going to have the right solution for our customers. We saw some announcements around VCF. Details were a little light on what, the 9.0 versions will look like. But we certainly are already planning, already have those things in the works. We know, from a VxRail perspective, that Rail is here to stay. I was just going to link, I was actually looking at one of the links that talk about one of the Broadcom Dell agreements. And we are going to support, whatever outcome works best for the customer. So we'll have VVF for, maybe smaller, lower end deployments that maybe don't need the full level of automation that 9 will support on the VCF side. But yeah, we've got a lot of innovation in the pipe.
Yeah, I think one of the key takeaways I had as a customer was it was great to hear them and every time we do a conference like this, they're going to introduce things that are new, right? But it wasn't like, hey, here's the portfolio of the 50 new things we're going to be pushing this year. It was really like, we heard your feedback. VCF needs more seamless upgrades. It needs to be better for you to really consume it as a customer, or to consider going to it if you're a customer that isn't already on it. So I think that really bodes well to the joint engineering for Rail as a VCF platform. So I think that for a lot of customers, that's what we want to hear, right? Is that if we can find any silver lining in this, because I know there's a lot of customers that are still upset navigating through this on their own, it is that there are less SKUs. That does sound like we're being told there is more focused R&D on the products that we use day in and day out. So hopefully that translates well to a better customer experience, right, for all of us, so that it's not a situation where we need to balance risks to the business or updates or what's supported, what's not supported. So it felt good for me to hear a lot of that directly from leadership at Broadcom about where they're going. So yeah, and then I guess we want to touch on basically what you guys can do from a licensing reselling perspective when we sell Rail and stuff like that. Maybe Ash, you want to tackle that one first?
Realize I was on mute now again too. All right, so yeah, so this is one of the areas we did spend a lot of time with customers and partners last week, is aligning on the availability of the VMware subscription licensing with VxRail. And I do think it's a great topic to talk about today and help distill and clarify and really amplify the message, right? So let me zoom out just quickly to the macro level first. And when you look at what has happened over the last several months, the first thing to understand is Dell and Broadcom have signed a new OEM agreement. So that's in place, that's signed, sealed, delivered. We did that at the end of May. And if you kind of want to step back, and I can't go into a ton of details, but if you kind of want to look at the primary focus of this agreement, it was really kind of two things. One, it was outlining the commercial aspects of transacting VMware subscriptions within the Dell portfolio, meaning how do we begin moving forward away from VMware perpetual licenses and now being able to transact VMware subscriptions with Dell and with our Dell portfolio like VxRail. But also a second part of that agreement was really about reinforcing the commitment and the co-engineering between the two companies with VxRail. So really post-agreement, the primary focus is we spent several weeks integrating with Broadcom systems so that we could operationalize the new VMware subscriptions on VxRail. And that was a significant amount of effort. Team really pulled it in and accelerated fast. And I'm very happy to say that it's enabled. And today you can call up Dell and talk to your account rep, or you talk to your partner, and we can transact both VMware vSphere Foundation as well as VMware Cloud Foundation OEM subscriptions alongside VxRail. So you can quote and order that today. Now we're rolling this out still for some regions, but I would say for 95% of our customer base, you can quote and order VxRail today with those subscriptions.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I don't know.
One thing
there.
Yeah, I was going to say, so Ash is absolutely right. For like those net new subscriptions, we are totally enabled And it's a, the experience that our customers have been asking us for. So, like what Ash mentioned, while we were getting those subscriptions stood up, process was a little bit different. But now for customers who, want to have that relationship, that single throat to choke with Dell, you come to Dell, buy the VxRail, buy the licensing, one piece of paper, no longer, the kind of disjointed subscription process it was for the weeks while we were getting our subscription offerings stood up. So we've got, really, that's great news to share. Our customers are pretty excited about it. One thing I will also say is that we are working quickly on enabling subscriptions as renewals. So for customers who have, expiring contracts, expiring maintenance terms, subscriptions are the new renewals from Broadcom. And we're working as quickly as we can to get those stood up for our customers so that, there won't be any lapse in maintenance term.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate we have two bundles we can offer. VCF, right? So it's not VxRail only with VCF anymore. It never has been only with VCF, but it's VMware with VCF subscription, and we can sell VMware with what they call VVF or vSphere Foundation. So both of those offers on the table, as well as vSAN as an add-on as well.
One question I'm seeing in the chat and in kind of the question and answer section here is that there's questions about whether or not we can support VVF on VxRail. We absolutely can support VVF on VxRail. Broadcom has, its top strategic accounts that Broadcom has identified as VCF customers. For those customers, that's where we will be selling VCF. So it will really depend on who the customer is, the customer's classification by Broadcom. But VVF customers typically are at the smaller scale. But the difference between a difference between VCF and VVF is that VCF includes an amount of vSAN storage. So for customers who might even typically be looking at a VVF or like traditional vSphere kind of environment, VCF might make more sense financially with that included vSAN. So we absolutely can sell VVF to VxRail customers where they have been identified outside of, I'll say, Broadcom's strategic customer classification.
Yeah, and and the good thing is part of the time we've spent enabling all this was also training our sales teams, training all our internal teams on not only how to help you size your environment for the new subscriptions, because we know there's a lot of questions there, but just questions and all. So if you have questions on what segment you fall in, what licensing is right for you, what the different offerings are, we not only have our sales teams that are trained up on this, but also as part of this OEM relationship and agreement, we have support that we can lean on with Broadcom. So we can bring in Broadcom support team. So even though we're selling the subscription, if you need some more expertise, we can bring in those folks as well.
Yeah, I was just going to throw in my perspective here of some of these conversations we've had with Broadcom, that they were kind of transparent that, New Belgium's existing business could land in either one. We're kind of in that weird middle of we're probably a medium-sized business. But when we looked at it holistically, the amount of vSAN that was included with the VCF, with the licensing, with the cores, made sense for us, right? It actually got to a point where it was more cost effective. And then also, I'd just say, we have a lot of smart people in the chat, a lot of smart people in the user group. That Broadcom wants some real success stories for customers going to VCF and having a good experience and championing that for them. Like, obviously, that's part of their R&D going forward. And that's not anything anyone here can control. That's just their company directive, right? So for us, I think we spent a solid couple years deciding, okay, is now the time? Are we big enough now that we have 8-10 clusters to be like, okay, it's time to get VCF. It's time to do some automation. It's time to implement some of those pieces. Where as a leader within my business, I kind of said, look, one, our hands kind of forced. We got to figure out a new contract. Two, what other products are in this stack that we can make sense of that add value to our company? And can I say, hey, I can rationalize a tool here, or I can do some automation there. So, everyone's personal journey with that is going to be different of where their company's at and where they want to go. But obviously it sounds like Broadcom's focus and push is for VCF. So the support there.
I think you called out something really important there, Adam. from a financials perspective, where there's a tipping point where VCF starts to make more sense for customers. And then the other thing too is that you can adopt the VCF, I'll call say exclusive or VCF feature technologies, at your pace too. Even if you buy a VCF subscription because it makes more sense financially, your adoption of the VCF suite is something that if you just want to be effectively a vSphere customer, you can still do that with a vSphere subscription. So you don't have to roll out the entire suite. If a VCF customer, and I do encourage our customers to look at the financials of both, depending on, again, their Broadcom strategic or non-classification.
Yeah, for us specifically around the vSAN licensing, to your point, it was worth it for us to make that jump and not use any of the extras. Now, obviously, we should use the extras because they're coming in there and make benefit of what you're paying for, right? But I guess I just would encourage everyone to look at that, right, and see where they land and try to figure that out. And again, to highlight a lot of the feedback I was hearing from customers is, okay, if you had a conversation, let's say Jan 1 of the year with Broadcom, you were hearing a certain thing that's kind of evolved. The story has gotten more reasonable, more structured. So, I encourage customers to reach out and say, hey, look, if we want to be here, this is what we need to get to and push. So it sounds like they're having more of those conversations now. I kind of likened it to how everybody, when you go to, college, that's like the only time you can get a discount on a Mac, right? I talked to a couple of key customers that were saying, like, if we don't get people started on VMware the same way it has historically, how will people still use VMware and in the Fortune 100 businesses and the larger companies of the world? So I think that there is an element of Broadcom's figuring that out, that they can't alienate customers enough to not have that feed into the system of using their software. So all of that to say, I think there's some more strategic customers and smaller accounts that are having conversations that make sense now that they were not having earlier. So just check in with your teams. Obviously, if we can help with any of that, we will, for new purchases and stuff like that. So
yeah, and I think you hit on a couple of good points, and that's, I'll say, our primary reason typically to go to these events, whether it's VMware Explore or Dell Technologies VxRail, is to meet with customers and partners and get that feedback. So it's actually quite interesting, kind of why you said that, is because at this year, I had the opportunity to talk to dozens of customers and partners one-on-one in private meetings, but also, Sam and I got to talk to many, many more on the show floor and throughout the event. If I had to summarize the feedback, what I'm hearing, and it's been consistent, it's been at the event and prior to the event, most are still somewhat frustrated, obviously, around, one part of the Broadcom acquisition that impacts them. Some are with pricing or support or the new offers. And I would say that many of customers are still dealing with a little bit of that uncertainty on what the future looks like. But I feel like that most of the feedback I'm getting is they're getting more answers and more clarity from Broadcom, and so that's helping in some case more than others. But I've definitely seen a change in perspective from the beginning of the year. And I know at the beginning of the year, many were dealing with kind of an emotional response, and we've been helping all along. And I know the Elevate user group has been doing things to help and say, hey, what we want to do is prevent customers from jumping into that kind of knee-jerk reaction that could put businesses, put their business at risk. I've seen a lot of that subside. Customers, I think, have, from what they tell me, have spent the last several months evaluating alternatives to VMware. And I think the general consensus is the majority of the workloads and use cases, there really isn't an alternative that fully meets their needs today. Now, it doesn't mean that they're not continue to look at how they can supplement, but really the feedback I've gotten is customers are looking for stability and want to minimize the impact, right? Like to people, to their cost centers. So I think to that end, the message we kind of deliver to customers over and over, and I'll deliver it here as well, is, for all VxRail customers and partners using VxRail, and any Dell Technologies product that supports VMware, I want to reiterate, specifically with VxRail, we're continuing to invest, right? Dell Technologies can invest. We can talk about roadmaps here in a little bit, but and beyond just Dell, Broadcom is continuing to invest. I think we talked a little bit about the licensing. Really, the only major change on the aspect of that relationship is the commercial side. And at the end of the day, regardless of which product you choose, like Dell is here to be your trusted partner, and we continue to work with our customers on evaluating options. And in that regard, we're agnostic, right? We have the broadest solutions of all, broadest options and solutions for customers, and some of the deepest partnerships in the market. So I just want to be very clear, and I read this to every customer, because I know there's rumors and things that go out. As VxRail's continue to be invested in, and will have a very bright future.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm also seeing a lot of stuff in the chat that, let me start with, I will say, as a lot of you, I've expected the same thing, right? We just wanted clear communications on how is this going to work, who's going to fit into what bucket, what are my options. I think Dell's had a very clear response of what they can and can't do, and then the things that are out of their control. The challenge is when that story changes a little bit on the Broadcom side of, oh, we're hearing this customer has that, or that customer can do this, or this person's getting that pricing, or it feels like they're being disingenuous, and maybe they are a little bit to some tune, right? But there is also proof in that the story's evolving a little bit, that it is changing, that they are, eroding this take it or leave it approach on some of it with certain customers. So I think that from a customer perspective, that's really all we can do, is just keep saying, look, we're going to evaluate alternatives. We're going to not put up with that and push back a little bit. And that's healthy, right? That's where you can really lean on your partners and your friends that are within this user group, that you can say, hey, what are you looking at? What are you considering? But to Ash's point, I think a lot of customers are quickly realizing there is no magic bullet, right? There is not something that we can go, hey, we can just go to this. Everything that's ready to be a competitive alternative to VMware has some caveats, right? And that's just where we're at. I think even our company has said, hey, our team, our engineers don't want to change. They know what they know. We want to stay here, but we'll keep reevaluating, and that's only natural. That's what every customer should do, is that at renewals, reevaluate and understand what's possible. But I think Ash highlighted a good point, that in the evolution of this, there's definitely at the beginning of the year people that were like, all bets are off. We're getting them out of the data center. We got to go find something else. I would encourage you to just take a moment and think about that, right? There are a lot of people that can help you. Don't put your business at risk on something like that, and try to keep having those conversations. And just don't be surprised that story is kind of evolving as time's going on. That's all. Yeah. Also, a lot of mentions for VxRail and Apex. We want to talk about licensing and different offerings there too.
Yeah, I think I think from a broader storyline, what we came, like, one of the things we did while we're at the show was obviously meeting with a lot of customers. But we also wanted to reinforce it, beyond, we know that the Elevate user group has a broad portfolio, not just VxRail, a lot of VxRail users, but also vSAN Ready Nodes, PowerFlex, other things. So while we had the opportunity to meet with a lot of customers, we also I was able to get on stage at one of the sessions. I delivered an hour-long presentation to around about 80 attendees for this session, and really the scope of the presentation was around Dell's broad portfolio of VMware aligned offers, and we also talked other things as well, but primarily talking about the Apex offers, as well as VxRail, vSAN Ready Nodes, PowerFlex, PowerStore, Native Edge. Kind of just the bullet points, the high level bullet points on what we talked about, so that everyone gets the opportunity to hear it. Is we led with VxRail because it's our first and best offer with VMware. It's just like I just mentioned, we reinforced our continued investment in VxRail, as well as Broadcom's investment and our depth of the roadmap. I also provided updates, on our broad VMware portfolio. So again, around vSAN Ready Nodes, where we continue to have one of the most flexible portfolios with multiple different PowerEdge platforms. I think we have 17 or 18 PowerEdge platforms available with vSAN Ready Nodes. But we also started, talked a little bit about how customers can kind of unlock their storage if they're looking for an alternative to vSAN. They can leverage PowerFlex or PowerStore, and they can share that storage across not only their VMware environments, but other ecosystems. So, we hit on the integration touch points with VxRail dynamic nodes and how you could use those to have that automation and orchestration for VMware, but also have a different backend storage. And then finally, we talked a little bit about native edge because we're talking more and more customers who are expanding outside the data center. So native edge is Dell's edge operations orchestration platform, and really we primarily included it in the presentation really because it does have some unique integrations with VMware. Their native edge has an orchestration engine that allows customer to deploy kind of curated blueprints for applications, and you can now connect native edge to your VMware vCenter, and then you can actually orchestrate deploying applications from native edge onto your VMware systems, whether it's VxRail or any other vSphere systems. So if you have an edge footprint, that's kind of an added capability that you can extend into your data center or wherever those environments. And I think feedback was very positive. Customers are always looking at options within the VMware portfolio, but also more broadly. And so it was definitely enlightening interacting with the audience after the presentation. So yeah, and I know, Sam, you also had a presentation at the Intel booth, right? And was that was kind of focused on AI?
Yeah, we had a really good, well-received presentation at the Intel booth where we talked about some of the Intel processor like AMX acceleration for AI workloads. Really being able to leverage on-chip Intel, well, I'll say on Intel chip acceleration for kind of like low or small language model workloads. So you can do quite a bit. I think it was like what, 12 billion parameters, up to 12 billion parameters without needing a full GPU enabled system. Intel AMX, when also paired with GPUs, gets even more powerful and allows our customers to do even more with AI. But yeah, we had a great session on kind of what we can do with Intel and AI on VxRail.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, and I assume some of the feedback I've received on AI, especially from a broad customer base, is that I think most customers are still looking at the complexity. So I'm not here to sell you on, hey, go buy like a massive install system, because I know that's not where most customers are on their journey. But what we kind of been positioning with Intel on the AMX technology is how we can simplify things and make it more cost effective, as you already have the capabilities in your new Intel chips that you're buying with VxRail. So it kind of gives you a stepping off point to start with AI without having to do any incremental investment. Use spare cycles, CPU cycles, if you have them. Many customers do, to dip your toes in, and then from that point on, you can expand into the VxRail portfolio GPUs or even into the broader Dell AI compute portfolio. So it's something that I think a lot of customers don't think about right off the bat, and the evolution of that AMX technology that Sam just talked about has really gotten really powerful, to the point that you can do a lot of training up to like a pretty sizable model, and you can do definitely some inferencing. So something to definitely consider that's available in the systems you buy today.
Yeah, I think as a customer, that's super interesting for me to be like, hey, that's a way we can get started with it. Or maybe we have an old rail cluster that we can say, hey, we can do a proof of concept on there or get started with some stuff rather than having to just go out and buy some hardware and then go. It seems like kind of putting the cart before the horse, right? Of saying, okay, we're going to go buy this hardware and then we'll figure out the use case of how we're going to use it and the ROI. So I don't know about you, but in most works, that doesn't fly. I need to come with a structured plan on how we're going to leverage that hardware before we get to buy it.
Yeah.
I think just something to touch on in the chat here, as I know that there's a lot of folks that, I just want to highlight that, we've talked about this a couple of times. This is very much evolving over time, specifically with Broadcom. So there are opportunities where sales teams might not be caught up, or the person you're talking to or the information you're hearing isn't the latest. And again, apologies, I think we all wish that was more structured, more black and white on this is in, this is not in, or where you're at in that journey. But I would just highlight to keep talking with those teams, re-engage, take some of the stuff away from here that you've heard from experts that are telling you what can be done. And then also, I know it's a tough time and a lot of us are cynical on that, but understand that Dell's a partner for you, right? So we're trying to highlight that Dell has other options if you need to explore other options, or maybe there's an opportunity to move some of your workloads to a different product, and then that's a happy medium. Like, everyone's situation is going to be a little different, right? Just talk with the teams and who you trust to kind of get a strategy for that. But don't be surprised if I candidly see from now until the end of the year that probably a lot of this will keep evolving with Broadcom. I'm seeing more and more customers have success with coming back to them and going, here's where I'm at, help me figure out where I go next. And obviously Dell would love to have those conversations with you too.
Yeah.
To solve that.
And I think that's great input. And I think, from my perspective, I encourage feedback to Broadcom. We, Dell as a product team, we thrive and, continue to exist and develop our products based on the feedback that we get from customers. Our customer feedback is everything. And I can tell you that, that is universal across product teams. So whether, Dell product team, Broadcom product team, I always encourage customer feedback. It's not something we shy away from. It's something that we welcome. One point, just to make real quick, and I know that certainly the last few weeks, months of VxRail and deals, and VxRail being only available as like a bring your own subscription model. Some of those things, all of those things, I should say, have been purely commercial challenges. Those are transacting challenges. Those are things that we've been dealing with while we get our subscriptions enabled, but none of it is a technology problem. From a VxRail perspective, we're continuing to develop. We have releases coming out all the time. We're continuing to build on the future Dell platforms, future VMware platforms, like VCF9, for instance. That is not changing, and our ability to support our customers doesn't change. So, moving forward, some of the commercial things, as we get those ironed out, this will become an easier conversation. But that's been a pure commercial discussion. One other thing that you touched on, Adam, that I also want to say is that, at Dell, I said this on an interview with theCUBE, we're firm believers in the multi-cloud, and that, we believe VxRail is the best Dell landing place for, and I'm selfishly, I believe it's the best landing place for VMware customers, period. Work with your sales teams, work with folks to say, for customers that do maybe want to explore other landing spots for their workload, work with Dell. For VMware workloads, like I said, I think we're the best. I think VxRail is the best place, period. And in that CUBE interview, I gave some statistics out there on why. But like I said, we're firm believers in the multi-cloud, and we're here for our customers no matter what path they take.
Yeah, and so I don't want this to come across as I want to reiterate kind of points that Sam has said and both Adam has said as well, because we understand that these sessions are great and you get to hear from us, but there's obviously this is all fast moving. Changes happen in between these meetings, so do reach out to your Dell counterparts. Broadcom is always a good resource. I know sometimes you may not be able to get the answer there. Come to Dell, right? We're here to partner. We partner with Broadcom. We meet with Broadcom very frequently, but I definitely don't want to come across that it's just a VxRail or just a VMware story, because as Sam said, we're agnostic. We have rich partnerships across the ecosystem. The main reason we're leaning in so heavily here is because we know our customer base, we know our partners, we know heavily you're invested in VMware, and so we want you to have confidence in our strategy moving forward and our investments moving forward, not only VxRail, but our broader VMware portfolio. But it doesn't mean that we don't also have a wide array of solutions that can help you wherever you need. So definitely reach out to Dell folks. We're constantly training our sales teams. We're working internally to triage all these questions and feedback and provide you as much direction to make you successful with your business as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to call out there and to just highlight, I don't work for Dell. I'm free to say whatever I want here, but, Dell is working to try to meet customers for wherever they're at in that journey, right? Just so I think there's a lot of times I hear feedback of like, oh, Apex Cloud Platform means that VxRail is going away, or, there are different products for different customers. That's absolutely not what that means, right? It just means that some customers are taking different approaches. You hear a lot of people that are saying, hey, I'm going to find an alternative for VMware. You see people that are saying, screw it, I'm going to push everything into AWS. Like, okay, that's a choice, right? But that each one of those choices has ramifications, right? So that as a customer, I would just say, pause. I honestly do this sometimes, reacting to emails and things. Just count to 10 and think about, is that the right decision of where you're going? Is it worth a conversation with Dell to say, hey, you do have these other products. Could I maybe put some workloads on this product, and then that reduces the licensing, so then that makes the renewal cheaper? And then maybe when I renew next year, it'll be even cheaper because Broadcom's kind of coming to their senses. Like, find a happy medium that works for you as a customer, right? There's a lot of options out there and a lot of different approaches you could take. And again, lean on people that have already been through it. We've had, the better part of 9 months of conversations with Broadcom, and we're just now finally at a point where maybe we can sign something before the end of the year. So it's been a long process for every customer. So I know that's frustrating, and that's not the answer you want to hear. Just understand that everyone in this room is trying to work to give you alternatives and different options and find what works for you and your business, because that's not the same answer for everybody, and it's changing quite a bit. So encourage you to just re-engage with those folks and try to figure out what's best. And I know I saw it brought up a couple times in the chat of, we've certainly been guilty of this all the time of like, hey, when we own our own infrastructure, when we have our own private cloud, we don't necessarily right size things, right? So there is definitely an opportunity where if you go through and, use live optics and things like that to really like look at your environment, right size it, you may find that you can get the licensing figured out a better way, or reduce, or what you need to get to something that's acceptable to get started. So just,
yeah,
that is an option.
That's a great point, and that's even feedback I got directly from folks at VMware, like, hey, or Broadcom, and I still say those interchangeably. I can't help it. When looking at, and this is again feedback I got directly from Broadcom, it's often a right sizing scenario. I had this conversation with someone when describing how hypervisors came to be. And it's, especially with how jam-packed full of cores, with how hugely performant and storage dense our servers are, get as much workload on those things as you can. Right size, optimize your gear, run everything, as much to the limit as you can, and then start to look at, well, how can I reduce my core count, or reduce the licensing that we bought traditionally. Right size your environments. That has been feedback we've gotten from customers, feedback from partners, and feedback from Broadcom.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out. Well, guys, any other final thoughts or anything we want to talk about as we start to wrap up here a little bit?
No, I think I'll just wrap with, again, reiterating the future of VxRail, like just where we're going high level. And, we have over 21,000 customers. We're continuing to grow, continue to have momentum. We talked about how we just released the VMware OEM subscriptions, and we're going to continue to optimize, enhance that process. We just released our latest update with 8.0 update 3 for VxRail and VCF on VxRail. And as we always have done, we're going to continue to collaborate. So with VMware. So we have releases planned for vSphere 7. We're going to continue to support that through the life cycle of vSphere 7. We're starting to shift our innovation and introduction of features into vSphere 8 first, right? Because that's where most customers are going, and then we'll backport some of that to 7. And of course, with the big announcement about VCF 9 and all the VMware 9.0 versions, we're going to continue to be time to market with VMware on that release. So a lot of the development there on the software side, but also on the hardware side, we've already begun some integration work on our next gen PowerEdge platform. So when we talk about the investment on both sides, both companies, Broadcom and VMware, it's really true. Like it's on our roadmaps. We're executing towards it. What Sam said is 100% accurate. All this disruption is really about migrating from perpetual licensing to subscription. Product wise, it is business as usual. And you can see that, you'll see that in our roadmaps and in our releases.
From my perspective, kind of in summary here, I've seen some questions about VxRail. I've seen questions about PowerFlex in the chat. I've been trying to keep an eye on that as much as possible. And then, the workload conversation. And like I said earlier, we're believers that, at Dell, we have an answer for your workload. And I would encourage customers who, you know, have had maybe challenges with the Broadcom transition, look at your workloads, see where they can be placed, rather than, you know, Adam, you mentioned kind of a knee-jerk reaction. I got to get off this thing. Right size workloads. Look at your workload. Where can it go? What's the right solution? For me, my answer, you know, to questions about the right solution for the workload, VMware workloads, right solution is VxRail. You know, we have high performant things like PowerFlex for, you know, incredibly fast, or for workloads that need incredibly fast storage. We have things out there for workloads like with PowerStore for, you know, general storage. We have VxRail for VMware workloads. It all comes back to the workload. And my take on it is that VxRail is the best place for VMware workloads, period. And that we, Dell, are happy to, you know, help customers through this journey. This has been challenging from a, you know, commercial perspective, but VxRail is here to stay for years to come.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's my biggest takeaway, right? Is that if I could give a little anecdote from a customer, right? We have been partnered with Dell for over 20 years at VMware. And a lot of the conversations with Dell are like, where is our business going, right? Having that future looking conversation. And I know that's been hard to have that conversation and that planning because there's been so much disruption, but really highlight leaning on people in user groups and things like that that have been through it or can experience it or can give you some insights on, hey, here are some things to look out for. Here's how we negotiated. Here's some workloads we moved around. We put this on native edge. We put that on Apex Cloud Platform. This made sense to put in Azure, so we put it in the public cloud, right? I think there's definitely this evolution of this is a forced opportunity, which is unfortunate, but it is a good opportunity for all businesses to look at their workloads and decide, where does it make sense to run these? What are we trying to accomplish out of these, running these workloads and where we're running them? And then how is that sustainable for where our business is going? Is it scalable? Is it what we need? You know, we've done nothing but VxRail at New Belgium, and that's our plan to keep doing that going forward because we do trust in that co-engineering between the teams. But now it's really just about how do we tune all of that? How do we get everything to where it needs to go? How do we get lined up to where Broadcom expects it to go? That big pivot from perpetual to subscription licensing obviously makes things easier. You can move workloads around. You're less concerned about updating licenses because it's a subscription. You're just consuming it. So I know the easiest answer is the hardest conversation, but once you're over that, it feels like then your house is in order. You have the correct infrastructure, the correct technical solutions, and the right software on it in one way or another, whatever bundle you end up on, whatever agreement you end up on, wherever you move your workloads. So I would just challenge all of you as business leaders for your orgs to think about that holistically and go, how can I turn this negative into as big a positive as I can? And I know that's hard. Trust me, there's multiple times this year where I wanted to be like, just screw it. I'm done. Like, I've had enough. I think we've all been through that, right? But you know, that's the challenge, right? That's what the business is looking for from all of you as leaders, is to be a little introspective, try to put your pride behind and just try to work to get that better. And I know that's super challenging, and know that all of us on the call are here to support you. Everyone in this user group is here to support you. So reach out. Don't feel like you need to do it yourself. And thank you. I think that's all I have. We can pass it back to Jenny to close us out here.
Yeah, thanks everybody again for joining. Ash, Sam, and Adam, really appreciate your insights. I know that there was a lot of questions in the Q&A and in the chat. If you were not able to get that answered, please feel free. I think some of the folks answering the Q&A are going to put their email in the chat, so feel free to email them. Or you can email Elevate Member Services and we can direct that question to the right person. I want to say thank you to our sponsors, Dell Technologies and Intel, and then also plug our next community hour for October. We have Kenny Lowe with Dell going to be doing a Microsoft Azure AI demo, so really excited about that. Registration will open for that tomorrow, so be on the lookout for some communications next week. I did include a link in the survey for a quick survey on how we did today. We would love your feedback for future programming and knowing what we can do moving forward. If you enjoyed the program today and enjoy being an Elevate member, please share future events with your colleagues and your friends. And with that being said, thank you again for joining, and we look forward to seeing you at future events. Bye, y'all.
Thanks all.
Bye.